Dame Susan Devoy, thanks for joining me today and driving from Tauranga. I know you didn't drive here for me, but, just right now, you drove here early, so I appreciate that.
Well, I did actually drive here for you. I just thought while I'm coming off it and other things. Actually, because we got confused with the dates, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
No, that's okay. I'd do anything to get away from home for 48 hours.
It's nice, isn't it? Just a break of scene. Is it the husband or is it the house?
No, the house is fine. My ideal holiday or break would be to have everyone leave the house, and I had it to myself. And it was clean when they left.
How many people are at home at the moment?
Oh, just John.
So your dream has essentially come true. Everybody's left. The 4 sons are gone.
Yeah, but that's been a work in progress. So pre-COVID, there was no one. And then during COVID and post-COVID, there was 4 boys returned home. And
all of them?
2 partners. And then my son and his partner lived with us for 2 years. We gave them till last Christmas to move out, so they got moved out. Then one son moved back in and before he went to Europe for a couple of months, and then another son moved back in before he went to Europe for a couple of months. So empty at the moment. Well, just John and I. But I don't think it's ever going to last forever like that.
I love the idea of them returning.
Yeah, no, but they do, you see. So and then you have enjoy the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
I'm resigned to the fact that half of my family will probably live overseas and I'll only see them every now and then. But I'm pleased that they're all going and, travelling and living their best lives, although everything's a bit late because of COVID. But, yeah, I'm pleased that they're all gone away and doing it.
Yeah, it's like a sign of some achievement, really, as a parent, isn't it? That your children have found a something to take up their time and a someone to do life with, potentially.
Yeah, I just don't know what it is. My husband's devastated because he enjoys, not that I don't enjoy their company, but, they share the same warped sense of humour and they play golf together and they like to go down on a Friday night to the pub and have a drink, only because my husband pays. John hasn't worked that part out, so yeah.
How would you describe the season that you're in at the moment? Personally,
my season of life, you mean?
Yeah.
You probably caught me on an interesting phase, you might say, that I'm between jobs. Mind you, I've been a long time between jobs. So I don't really know whether I'm retired or not retired or what I want. I haven't really found what I want to do next and, what's going to give me joy or whatever, I don't know. Someone described it really appropriately the other day as, she said their father used to wake up, this is years ago, and say he felt rather unnecessary. And I thought, that's quite a good term, really. Sort of out of sorts a little bit. Yeah. I think that's what I've struggled with most in the last few years, is I was always such a goal-orientated, focused person, and everything I did had meaning and purpose, and, I got a lot of self-satisfaction and an achievement. And then, I don't know, once I left the Human Rights Commission, I don't know whether I was so physically and emotionally spent that it affected me, or I've been going through the change. It's probably it. It's probably a combination of both, actually. One triggered the other, and
they feed into each other.
I'm not putting them out as an excuse for some of my irrational behaviour in the last wee while. But yeah, no, it's a bitch being a woman, honestly. It really is, isn't it?
I don't agree that it's a bitch being a woman.
No.
But I do agree.
You haven't grown up with 6 brothers and no sisters and 4 sons and no daughters.
I have not.
No.
And I am very grateful for the daughter I have, and I rue that I do not have a sister. But I have not grown up with 6 brothers and 4 sons. And I think that there are a lot of challenges about being a woman. In fact, I'm pretty sure I thought I was a boy for a while. Like I lived in a household where women were better than men, thanks to my mother's orientation. Girls are better than boys. And I also felt equal at times to, like, the men were talking and the women seemed to be cleaning and fussing with things by and large, and I wasn't super interested in the cleaning fussing. I was much more interested in the talking, and I thought I was very rational and not emotional at all. So I definitely went through a stage of development when I was a 20-something-year-old where I was like, just felt like kind of a pragmatic and masculine style person, which I look back on now and go, wow, that's so weird. But it was like this sense of just being, this is me, and why can't I be the same as you? Why can't I be equal to you? Why would I be I'm not going to discount myself for being emotional, so therefore I won't be emotional. And happy to say that I'm much more emotional now, and I still don't discount myself. But there are challenges to being a woman.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, my mother was the matriarch in our family, and whilst I was the youngest of 7 after 6 brothers, and was doted on. Doted on to a point where, they were a working class family, and incredibly, my mother worked full-time, as long as I can remember, quite sort of unusual in those days, and she did because she had to. And she ran a house, and she ran my father, and so I grew up thinking that I was equal too, and that girls could do anything apart from being the All Blacks that any male could do. It wasn't until I left home and, played professional sport, and when the realisation came from that the world wasn't actually equal and that we were not so much inferior, but, there was certainly a huge gender inequality, and there still is.
How do you think we're going on that? Because I tire of the idea that there's only room for one gender at the top of the apex, like it's them or us. It's like women rule or men rule, and that men somehow, I don't know, are reduced by women's rising. I just don't think that's what we're seeking. It's not what I seek. I think men are added to by women's rising. I think there's enough space for equity, for there to be a seat at the table for everyone. But you're the Race Relations Commissioner, so you know more about the stuff than I do.
Well, gender and ethnicity, I mean, they're all the same, aren't they? Diversity and inclusions are fancy terms that corporates use these days and tick the boxes to say that they're doing. But, yeah, if we start first with sport, I think we just need to put a stake in the ground and say women's sport is women's sport and men's sport is men's sport, instead of the comparisons all the time. Mm-hmm. My husband was sitting there watching the women's football, okay? Wasn't terribly enamoured about it when it first came, and then we got sort of excited and we started watching it, and we sort of, I'd really admire their athleticism and blah, blah, blah. And he kept saying, they just kick it down the field. They don't pass through the middle like the men's game. I said, how much football do you actually watch, John? You're just making a stark generalisation because you don't watch any men's bloody football, But you think you're entitled to make a comment about a game you know nothing about, and you're making the comment for the mere fact that it's women playing. If they were dressed, if there was a male's team playing the same game, you wouldn't be making the same comment. I remember when my sons were really little and they played football, and a woman was refereeing. It was really serious stuff at 9.
Very serious.
Very serious, and a very bad decision was made when the football hit the crossbar, and my son came off with his arms folded and said, women should not be allowed to referee at this standard. I slapped him. No, I didn't.
No, but you felt like it.
But, how does that attitude evolve? Because
I don't know.
he's not getting it home.
I know.
It's getting it at school or within the sporting environment. And so, yeah, I think it's really getting better. I think sometimes, look what's happened with the football. Nobody wanted to buy tickets. Nobody wanted to go.
Now you can't get a ticket.
Now it's been amazing. Mm-hmm. The same, and I think we're lucky that the women's rugby paved the way for that because we saw how successful women's sport could be.
Yeah.
But, it's not women that need to keep fighting for that. We need men to keep standing up for us too. And there are good men out there doing that sort of stuff. It's just going to take, quite a while. But, look, I used to always describe it, people would compare me to Jahangir Khan. There was the contemporary of my era. I probably wouldn't have got a point if I played Jahanga, but I said, we're not comparing physicalities, we're comparing skills. And I said, it's a bit like boxing. You don't put a bantamweight into the ring with a heavyweight, do you? So I think people need to stop comparing apples with oranges and appreciate women's sport.
For what it is.
Yeah, for what it is and for what is sport about.
Yeah.
One, it's about enjoyment, competition, participation, encouraging other young women to be active and enjoy sport as well. All the lessons in life that sport teaches you about that. And so we should just salute it and get on with it.
And sport is like this universal language in so many ways. People who come from completely different countries, speaking completely different languages, with completely different backgrounds, socioeconomically, religiously, anything. And if they know a sport in common, they can play together. They can communicate with each other and actually have an exchange that is potentially quite joyful and positive, which is a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, when I was the Race Relations Commissioner, that was one of the real positives of the role, was getting involved in some of these ethnic sports competitions, which were predominantly football. There was a little bit of cricket, but mostly football, because that is the beautiful game. Mm-hmm. And as you say, these were people coming together from different ethnicities and cultures, playing football and celebrating. And and it's just grown because we've got so many more different cultures that live in New Zealand now. But it's always a catalyst, isn't it? The same with music and cultural festivals. There was, I don't know if it happens still now, but there was a magnificent festival in Auckland called Eclectica, run by a Chinese New Zealander who taught English actually at Auckland Girls Grammar.
Awesome. And
she started this, and it was a fusion where you had to have 3 different cultures performing together.
Wow.
Dancing, and it was phenomenal, and those are the things that were the positives of the role.
Yeah. Yeah, we will touch on that, I think, the Race Relations Commissioner role. Wow, there's a lot of media around that. Can I just suggest that I can see a correlation between we need good men to speak up for gender equity? Is that not just exactly the same in race relations and biculturalism, that we need good Pākehā to stand in the gap for Māori and good race relations?
Yeah, we need good everyone. I mean, firstly, we need good statesmen and stateswomen who are our political leaders, I was the Race Relations Commissioner, but I'm not responsible for, improving our racial discrimination. I'm not entirely the sole person responsible. And you're right, and there are plenty of good Pākehā that are, leading the charge and whatever, but I don't know, as a result of COVID or as a result of all the discussions around co-governance, and it may be just that I'm overly sensitive to it, but I think we've got more division than we possibly had even when I was in the role. But, when I started, I read through everyone else that had been in the role, and every single person at the time said that they were at a crossroads. Race relations was at a crossroads, It's at a crossroads now, it's at a crossroads then, and whatever. And yeah, I think it's just, an intractable problem. It's always going to be there. It's never going to be eradicated. But yeah, I think we used to compare ourselves with Australia, and I said, well, we shouldn't, have the benchmark so low. But
that's a good point.
We will never be a fully multicultural society until we've fully adopted our bicultural foundations, and that's the struggle, because I know now and back then that at least 75% of the personal complaints and criticisms and things that came to me were all from the same demographic. They were old, not always men, but predominantly male, white, but you couldn't call them Pākehā because that offended them as well, threatened, and in some ways, I wouldn't say scared, but certainly threatened that something that was never theirs in the beginning was going to be taken away from them. And I don't think any education in the world is going to change that attitude, and I think that attitude has been, they've been slightly empowered by what's happened, the minute they hear politicians talking, using, dog whistle politics or race politics, that they feel beholden themselves to be able to say the things they only thought, but to say them out loud and to other people. And, I just don't want to talk anymore about co-government. I mean, I do, but, people will raise it, and I just know that whatever I say, it's not going to change their point of view. The only thing that's going to change is that eventually they will pass away. And let's hope that the next generation haven't inherited those beliefs that they have.
I hear what you're saying. As far as feeling like it's almost incomprehensible to me how adding another language to a street sign is so offensive. How an addition of something that kind of reveals more of who we are, that makes us a more exciting country to visit, that makes us more respectful of our history, more informed, have a deeper and greater understanding of our whenua, of our country, is offensive to anybody. And even the idea that it would be confusing makes no sense to me.
In Tauranga, when I was the commissioner, they were replacing the signs because they were outdated and they wanted to put a macron on automotai. Oh my goodness. It was just, I just couldn't actually believe. And then there's a media frenzy around it because the editor of the little local rag, The Sun, knew that he could create some sort of maelstrom here and let it all bubble to the surface and get more people writing letters to his little paper and
get attention, get advertisers, get money maybe.
Yeah, and get more, more aggrieved about something that's absolutely... the same as when, I was accused of trying to abolish Christmas because I was so important. And that was in the Auckland Regional Migrant Society, which is now called Belong Aotearoa, a service set up to support newcomers to New Zealand, migrants and refugees. Pretty harmless, actually, navigate their way through everything, getting an IID number, enrolling their children in school and whatever. Predominantly most of them weren't Christians, and so they decided, the women, that they would just remove Christmas out of the Christmas lunch, because some people felt that it didn't include them actually. Yeah. They would, and so it was a season's greetings lunch. I don't know what it was, but that just, honestly, that escalated beyond actual belief, and I got accused of wanting to, abandon Christmas, and I got Christmas cards galore. Nobody gets Christmas cards anymore, but I got thousands of them.
Yep.
Rather ironic, I thought, with the message of Christ and Jesus, that all of these people that, someone sent me a box of feces that was wrapped up in beautiful Christmas paper, and the box didn't offend me so much. Yeah. It was the fact that someone had come down my driveway in the middle of the night and left it there overnight.
Right.
Someone sent me a book of about Christianity to my local squash club. I am a Christian, so it's like, what would Jesus do? I think he'd want all of us to celebrate in the manner that we do, and this is where I can't quite understand the IQ of people in this country sometimes. Or not this country, anywhere.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think Jesus would have gone to the lunch.
Yeah.
Whatever it was called. Don't think he would have minded a jot.
It just
let's have a celebration lunch. Good idea.
Belief, and I know some of these people, and I see them around, and I know they're the people that sent me the cards, or they signed them, so of course I know who they are. But yeah, I sort of get to the stage where it's sort of pitiful, I suppose. But I just hope that the next generation is. I don't hope. I know.
Yeah.
Look at Matariki.
I know.
It was amazing, wasn't
it? It's amazing.
There was... I just thought, here we go, we're going to have real fireworks because people are going to be... But no, people mostly accepted that, and... Yeah. The problem is we're not hearing enough good stories about things like co-governance, and people have got themselves really wound up about that because they think it's all about Māori wanting to control the water and the airwaves and the signs.
Yeah. Do you know what I think? I think it's people who have potentially got the power or a sense of control, feeling like they're losing it, and their experience of power and control is the European paradigm of it. And so the idea of somebody else having some power and control is that they will use it against them in the same way that it's been used potentially against Māori. So I see female and male leadership as potentially quite able to work together, but they're different. And so I don't think women naturally or necessarily lead in the same way that men lead.
Thank God.
I know. But it's not that there isn't a place for male-style leadership, but there is a place for both. And so there's a place for Indigenous leadership. There is a place for it. It is important. Let's combine it. Let's get the best of both worlds.
I'm on a board for Otago University. It's a Centre of Research Excellence, a core, and it's the most. It's just an amazing, positive example of co-governance, which I think has happened organically.
Yes.
Not necessarily deliberately by choice, but, So I'm probably the only person on the board, and there are Pākehās and Māori and Pacifica, who doesn't speak fluent Te Reo Māori, so that's, a bit awkward, but that's okay. And then the chair is Sir Mark Solomon, and then there's the Vice-Chancellor of the university, and then they have all the leaders, there's Pākehā and Māori and Pacifica, and the thing is to try and encourage more Māori and Pacifica to do PhDs, and it's all about coastal sustainability. So they work with the local iwis and the runangas, and they use all the kaumata and queer and gather all their, generations of knowledge and treat that as real research as opposed to just, And I would tell anyone if they went to the noho marae that I've been to, even if they'd never been on a marae before, and listen to these stories and see how this works, they'd come away with a totally different, feeling about co-governance. Now, everyone is so threatened by, they really genuinely think that Māori are going to take over New Zealand. That's not going to happen. We know that, sensible people know that. And or that they are not responsible for what happened, after the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi. And we know that too,
Yep.
But don't use the word colonisation, because that just is about as, that really gets up people's nose. But, I liken it to, the inquiries we're having now about state abuse, okay? If you've never experienced it yourself, I used to sort of think, this is ridiculous, that trauma is intergenerational and hereditary,
I do know.
How could that be? Just because something happened to you doesn't necessarily mean that if leads a perfectly different life, it's not going to be the same. Well, it is the same. And, I'm not saying that there are still Māori that suffer from trauma, but we can't, what I'm trying to say is we can accept the past for what it is. We need to learn from it to be able to move forward. Nobody's blaming anyone for what happened back then. What we're just trying to do is make it a more even playing field.
So I agree, intergenerational trauma exists, and epigenetics is a scientific study of intergenerational trauma. It actually shows up in our genes. It's visible under a microscope how the tails of DNA will wind up and unwind, and they've done studies specifically from people who significant Holocaust trauma, who their grandchildren have memories and emotions and experiences that they could not have had, but that are inherited through their DNA. So this is science. It's not airy-fairy, and I know for me, when I've lost something really important to me, something of value and significance, I got burgled and people took the first ever jewellery my mother gave me, and occasionally I go, I'll never get that back. It's lost to me. That those beautiful things that meant something to me and were an inheritance of mine are gone. And yes, I have moved on, and yes, I continue with my life, but they are still lost, and so there's healing that's possible, but to just say, you just get over it. And
I don't know the science. I know there is science, and I don't know that, and I didn't. But I just saw so many people, these were the things that changed my life dramatically, I suppose. The survivors of state abuse or faith-based abuse, refugees and asylum seekers, and And that's exactly what many Māori have experienced and are experiencing, and it's very difficult for people to want to understand it. I can say very difficult to explain. It's easy to explain. It's very difficult to people to actually understand it or acknowledge that it's something that's true and very real, and that's I think where we're, it's a real struggle for us to change that. But I hope our generation, I hope my children, just as I have tried to bring up for good young men, they've missed out that deep-seated, in-depth education about the Treaty of Waitangi and their time at school, but they've also come through with great pronunciation, understanding of the haka and protocol and tikanga and things like that, but not to the same level that our generation's been educated now. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to take a while, but I think it'll be amazing. My son's fiance is an American. She teaches at Mount Primary School, and she's found it quite difficult, but only to the point because she felt nervous about it. But man, she's embraced it. Matariki, flying the flags, digging the hangi, making the poise, singing the songs. She's just learning everything about it. It's just amazing, isn't it? If you go in there with no barriers to it, you actually see, man, I've got the chance to experience another culture. And for us, Pākehā and whatever, it's our culture.
Yes, it
too.
is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's what they don't want. That's what people are frightened about. Not my culture. What is your culture? I don't know. My great-grandfather was born in England. I've got Anglo-Saxon background. I've got some German and some Sweden and whatever, and I said, you've probably got some Māori if you do your DNA test. No, won't have any of that.
I wish I had Māori in me. But I do. I have a aroha in my heart. So can we talk about this idea that, we might learn something or get something wrong, learn something new, and change our mind? Because for people in the public eye, and I know you've experienced this, so often you're held to your former self, like the article you did about Waitangi Day, having heard about it, and you were like, oh, this is tricky, and maybe we need another day, another New Zealand, need to move on, have another New Zealand Day. And yet that was very definitely held against you for holding that belief. What do you think that relationship is between holding a belief and then going, oh, that I didn't know the whole story, or I've just discovered I was wrong?
Yeah, I think it's, first we acknowledge, that we've all got our prejudices. We're all intolerant of something, someone, somebody.
It's true.
Whether it's older people driving cars, or,
younger people wearing their pants too low.
Mine is young babies on an aeroplane. And I sit and think, crikey, I've got 4 children. How could I ever? And I'm like, oh, God, I hope that baby doesn't sit next to me and that mother. It's like, that's a trivial example. But, we all have prejudices and intolerances. And we have to, the bigger person will have some self-awareness about themselves to actually reflect on, and I've certainly done a lot of that in the last few years. Not just about things that I believed in or, my own value system or whatever, but it's a continual learning. You don't expect to go into a role and know everything, and then you've got to try and change. But I think it's really important that we can all sit around adults and have conversations. It just seems that we can't have courageous conversations about difficult subjects, whether they be religion or race or politics or whatever. I don't know, because people are so deep, hold their views so strongly that they couldn't possibly think that they could be wrong. And, I think it's a big person that walks away, including myself, and thinks, yep, actually, they're probably onto something there, and, I could learn something from this, or I could...
Have we just elevated being right or knowing everything too much? Has that become too important to us?
No, I think the opposite is, I think we won't acknowledge when we've got it wrong. I think, particularly in the public service, we're so busy...
Protecting our back?
Yeah, covering things up. But I think it's about, I think when you make a mistake, irrespective of the scale of it, is you need to own it first, acknowledge it, apologise, fix it, and make sure it never happens again. And so I think, we see a lot of cover-ups, in my opinion. and sometimes I think reviews and inquiries and all those things protect the very people that they're actually designed to expose, in my opinion.
Wow.
That's my opinion.
Ouch.
When you have reviews conducted by one person, no matter how good that person is, that's still their point of view.
Mm.
They've listened to a whole lot of people and they have to determine by that who is telling the truth and whatever. And I know personally that people can construe stories or perhaps even lie, because it's all about self-interest. It's not necessarily about doing what's right for the organisation or for the other people or your colleagues that work for you. At the end of the day, many people just come back to their own self-interests and how am I going to protect my own arse? And that's what I learnt the most. So,
Where did you learn that?
I learnt that at the Commission. I learnt firstly a couple of things. Firstly, if you rock the boat, you'll get wet. You'll probably nearly drown. And if you are going to be the whistleblower, then, it's not that easy to speak truth to power. And if I'm in a position of seniority and privilege in my role, and it's hard for me, imagine how hard it is for everybody else. I've had to sit in Peter Hughes's office, and I've had to go to Minister's office, and I've sat in Rebecca Kitteridge's office, and I've shat myself. I've been nervous, I've been scared, and I'm the Race Relations Commissioner, I'm doing my job. So, all of these people that have come out recently or, historically and said, it's a toxic workplace or it's a bullying culture or there's sexual harassment or, there's racial discrimination in this workplace. How hard is it for them to be heard if they're not even really taken seriously? The saying is, my doors are always open. Oh, yes, so long as you walk in and tell me what I want to hear. That's the thing with leaders, you see. They haven't really got their ears open. But, it's like I would have quite liked to have stayed for a little bit longer at the Commission. I'm not sure whether I could have done another term, but a change of government, it was Labor government. I really wanted to see what would be different under a different government. I assume or that human rights would probably be a little higher in the agenda of the Labor government. Mm-hmm. But at the end, there was a review and I came out as a disruptor, and I knew that I couldn't be part of the solution. I knew I wasn't the problem, but I'd certainly escalated it. But as I left, I made sure that, I made a stand or a public statement to say that, I'm not the only one that should be going, and hopefully the organisation will be a better place for other people to work in. And it has. So, I've heard that. So that's a good legacy to leave, isn't it?
That is a positive thing. How would you describe your leadership style when you were at the Race Relations Commissioner?
Leadership style. I find really difficult talking about leadership, because really I wasn't. People have a sort of funny perception of what the role is, So I had a strategic role. I was on the board. This is why it's sort of a bit, complex. Yeah. So I work in the organisation. I'm the commissioner, so I have an operational role. I don't have a management role because I have no staff.
Right.
Okay, but I work with all the staff. I don't manage the staff. I have my colleagues. They're managed by someone else, the CEO, or I don't know, whatever. And then, we're on the board, and then we have a strategic role, and so it's all. So, yeah, for me, I was often the ball carrier, that's how I would describe myself, because certain topics would come up or sensitive issues or whatever. They'd have to go to the legal team, so I'd have to trust that they knew what they were doing, and they'd have to trust me that I knew what I was doing, and then it was how we would say it, which was the comms team. And so, finally you go out there, you spend more time in that job practicing what not to say than what to say. And I've talked before about being told when I first got there never to mention the word racism. And I thought, well, that's going to be a bit tricky.
As the Race Relations Commissioner?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
yep.
So, my leadership style is not really that I expect or want others to follow me or do whatever, because I'm a bit of a lone wolf, really, so I wouldn't say that I'm a leader in any shape or the form, I'm just me. Yeah. I think in hindsight, I was so desperate to prove myself in that role because I had so many
naysayers.
Yeah. And I think I turned a lot of them around. Probably not all of them. I probably got a few more people that thought I was going to be the opposite. You know, I probably,
There was a quote here that said you lost a lot of your fan base because they were older older white Pākehā.
I think at the end it was quite nice because certain people, you know, I went to the iwi Leaders Forum and, you know, Margaret Mutu and Mike Smith and these people gave pretty rousing endorsement, which was nice because they weren't impressed when I started, and so were a lot of others. And, you know, Oscar Kitely, I really respect him. He wrote a really good article when I left. And not that I read much about me, I can promise you, because why would you do that, self-flagellation? But he did say that perhaps it was an inspired choice after all to have someone who, you know, was well known, had a high profile in New Zealand, was a respected sports person. And, you know, let's face it, we are the people who are the most racist. So, you know, perhaps people would listen. And I think all the letters and all the complaints and all the criticism meant in the end I was doing a great job, because it was raising the ire of all of those people who thought I was going to be exactly the opposite. You know, finally we've got someone who's
Going to be
a white woman in there, you know.
speak common sense.
But yeah, and she's going to say what we're all thinking, because, you know, that's what people thought. But yeah, I mean, I got a tough time at the beginning. I'm sure that was firstly because people think you're just a sports jock. It's hard to knock that label or tag or whatever. No one had any understanding of what I'd done up till then, because it was sort of under the radar. You know, I was the first woman, and there's no doubt that women get a much harder time in anything. Let's face it, I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, but, you know, why should it be? You know, why should it be? God, it's frustrating and draining and whatever. But, yeah, so, you know, I would have liked to have had that term, and unfortunately that happened. But, yeah, I mean, as I said, I think in some ways I was the perfect person for the role, because my role is to hold the government to account, or to anyone to account, you know, and I think without fear or favour I did that.
Yeah.
And we made a lot of change that people don't know about. We influenced a lot of policy, you know, a lot of stuff that goes on in the background that doesn't make the news and whatever. So,
But that's important work.
Yeah, it is, you know, around international students or, you know, refugee quotas. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff. It was really, yeah, it was pretty cool work, actually. The worst part was when someone had a public brain fade and said something racist, and I had to make a comment, because everyone thought I was the judge, juror and adjudicator.
Oh, no.
They want me to say so-and-so's racist. I never said anyone was ever racist. I made sure I never said that. I said what they said was racist.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that they're a racist person.
Yep.
You put your hand on your heart and said you've never said anything racist.
No, I can't do
No,
that.
no, but neither can I.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah, and it was never about wanting to have a conversation about the issue or the topic. It was always wanting to have a conversation about the person.
You are somebody who was a disruptor in your role. You must have been in perimenopause at some point. You must have entered that phase. How was your transition through perimenopause?
It took me a long time to identify it, you know. I'm lucky, touch wood, I've lived a relatively healthy life. I've never had many major issues, and I've never had many women's problems, you know. But I remember when I started at the Commission, I used to stay with a friend of mine in Auckland, and I'd be up there a couple of days a week, and then I'd be in Wellington, whatever. And I used to go there, it was the middle of winter, you know, and we'd be sitting there watching some crap on television, and she'd get up in the middle of winter and go and stand outside in her dressing gown, and I'd say, Leonie, what the hell are you doing? She said, oh my God, these hot flushes, they're just awful. And I was like, yeah. Well, if that happens to me, I'm going to breeze through it, because I've breezed through everything else in life and whatever it brings. Because my mother had a hysterectomy, I think at 42 or something like that.
So
I don't know. I was very young.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, I wasn't that young. I must have been about 10, and she was about 50 or something. But she breezed through it, you know, like it was nothing. And it was quite a major operation back then, you know. And my mother never talked to me about anything like that. She never talked to me about periods or sex or
anything.
No one ever spoke to her about it either, I don't think. She told me about when she had children, and the second one arrived, and she still couldn't quite know how the first one... Well, she knew how it made, but she didn't know how they came out and all that stuff. But so, yeah, and then suddenly, just out of the blue, everything started to... I'm pretty blunt anyway, but I got very irritable. Small things triggered me off. Not very tolerant either, but I was even more intolerant. Little things would set me off, you know, and if I was drinking, having alcohol, I just want to kill someone, and the hot flushes after that were just revolting. And then my sleep. dry skin, dry everything. You know, I mean, it was just...
Sleep disruption's a killer.
But you know what? I just kept going and thinking, it'll pass. I probably only got another month.
Oh, wow.
Well, you know what I mean? It'll.
Yeah, it takes half an hour.
You know, I've got a male doctor and he's moved on. He's gone to another clinic, and so I've been registered with someone else, and she looked about 12. And I thought, well, is there a test for me? I mean, these are things I'm asking myself, and I'm a fairly educated woman. I'm doing Dr. Google. I sent John away one night with he goes away a bit, and I said, here's your homework to find out about menopause. It might understand why I'm a bit pissed off all the time. And he just came back with a little Wikipedia thing, and he'd sort of scribbled it and had mood swings and irritability. Is that what you've got? I said, yeah, well, that's pretty empathetic, isn't it? So, yeah, it was and is very debilitating. Very debilitating. So, you know, I've got all the symptoms, sore bones, you know. I like to be really fit. Now I'm struggling to do a lot of things. I've got really sore knees, and I keep thinking it's osteoarthritis. It's, you know, it's probably not. It's part of the thing. I think the sleep is, you know.
That's so a good description.
Yeah. It's, if you're not hot, you throw all the covers off, and then you get cold, and then you wake. I sleep for about a really concentrated period, about 3 or 4 hours at the beginning, and then it's just waking all the time.
Wow.
So I always want to have a nana nap, and then that's sort of counterproductive. But I've started HRT.
How's that going?
I'm on day 3.
Wow. You've really resisted for a long time because you're 59.
I have tried a lot of things, though. When I say resisted, I've tried a lot of natural therapies,
I shouldn't say the word resisted because
but
it's your
wish
choice.
I wish I just had. You know, I just wish I don't know, was I stubborn, or was I thinking, I'll get through this, and I was for a period of time. I felt really, really good, really, really good for a while, and was on top of it, and, you know, did a whole lot of stuff and whatever, and then wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, it's come back with a vengeance, because I think it's sort of a punishment.
Don't say that.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm
from the gods.
I'm on the HRT,
okay. And
I tell you what, really was that program last year on television. I know,
Davina McCall.
Was it lies, myth, sex, myths, and menopause? Or something like that?
It was. Yeah, they played the British one. Yeah.
And you just sit there and you think, that could be me.
Yes. So, do you think you didn't really realise it was perimenopause?
No. And when things were pretty bad at the commission, I did lose my temper one day and probably made some comments that, I don't think they're very bad, but, you know.
They pushed someone's button.
Yeah, I used the F word, and I should never have used it. That is wrong. And the next day, Jackie Blue, who was also a fellow commissioner, the Equal Employment Commissioner, said, you know, should we catch up for a coffee? I'm a bit worried about you. And she sat there and she said, are you okay? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm just pissed off. You know, that shouldn't have happened. It's not right. And she said, do you think you're going through menopause? And I was like, phew. I sort of laughed, really. I mean, she's a medical doctor, you know, a breast cancer specialist was. Why would you then go to politics? I've got no idea. But anyway, and she said, you should go and see your doctor, you know, and if you took half a Prozac, it would really help with your hot flushes and your mood swings. In hindsight, she was right. So then there's the battle between, is my behaviour irrational because I'm going through menopause, or, you know, would I change? And I think that certainly I think I would have. I may not have reacted so badly to things or whatever. I mean, you're tired and you're sleep deprived, and you start as you get older to feel invisible. You know, you do really feel like, and when we talk about diversity around tables, I mean, it's pretty hard for a white older male at the moment to get everything. That's their fault, because previous white older male. But it's getting the same for older women as well, you know, and so you do go through this self-doubting of, you know, when I was 20, 30, 40, 50, I'd wake up every morning and think, God, what am I going to do for the rest of my life, you know, or what am I going to do when I grow up or whatever. And now I'm nearly 60, in my 60th year, I think, geez, what am I going to do with the time I've got left, you know. I mean, hormones, they're just horrible little things. And, you know, they've given us children and whatever, and now they should just bugger off. I've got no other purpose apart from growing hair on your chin and on your lip and out of every other orifice. And honestly, it's just awful.
Well,
awful. So after day 3, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. So
I'm going to be checking in with you because I think things are going to change.
you know, I am.
And hormones are so powerful, and they really rip the 90s of a quarter of the population of women. Like, they really churn everything up and make life ultra challenging. And there are the quarter that sail through, and then there are the half that do it.
I think part of my problem is, and we're getting very deep and personal here, and all the people that are listening, you know, someone might be the same as me. I avoid going to the doctor like the plague.
Because?
I don't know, I have this thing that I'm not going to like what I hear. I mean, isn't that pathetic?
Well, it's not that it's pathetic.
You know, my father's died of cancer, my 2 eldest brothers have died of cancer, my 3rd brother's had throat cancer, my 4th brother's had melanoma, I've had a melanoma scare, fine. And I just think, you know, the odds are on. I mean, we've got the Marcus in our family. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Is that so, I mean, that's again sounding like I'm really...
It's a dangerous position.
I know.
Because
I do go and have my mammograms, I do go and have my things, but, you know, they're never early, they're always late, and I do get around to it. But
there's no judgment here because I've just had my first mammogram. I think that it's a human thing to not want bad news. I think it makes perfect sense for us not to want to find out something terrible. I sat with a 21-year-old yesterday who's suffering immense period pain, and I said to her, I'm going to sit with you while you book the doctor's appointment, because it's been another month and it's been another 2 debilitating days of being curled in the fetal position in bed. And I said, what is it about booking this appointment? And they said, I don't want to find out that I've got endometriosis. I don't want to find that out. Now, they may find out they don't have endometriosis.
And even if they do find out
they've got it, then they can
yeah.
do something about it.
I know.
But I understand that bad news is bad to receive. And yet how do we AFI ourselves? How do we hold on to ourselves and each other to walk towards the bad news so we can take life-giving action?
I just think, you know, it would be really good if you had a little lady at the clinic, like they have nurses to take your smears or to do whatever, you know, whatever. I mean, when I went into the doctor, she's young or whatever, and I think very young. And
not that we're being ageist.
I know, no, but I've got 15 minutes here.
Yeah,
and
I know.
she says that on her little thing that she's a specialist in women's something. So I thought, 15 minutes, I'm going to have to rehearse this because she's going to ask me what's wrong. And I'm going to have to do it in a way that I get everything out in 15 minutes that I need to do so that, you know, and of course it's simple, isn't it? It's a blood test and then it's some patches. Shit. But I didn't, I kept thinking, it's, you know, I'm not in any pain. I'm a bit grumpy and it's making me feel... But
so what were you thinking? I don't deserve this?
No, I was thinking, you know, I'm going to be 60 soon. I reckon it'll be gone by then. That's what I thought. You know, I've been through this. I've been through so long, nothing's worked. So I might as well just hang in there and eventually it'll go. But, you know, then I started talking to people who's still having it when they're 70 and, you know, they go on forever. And I thought, ooh. And, you know, I was a bit spooked by all that HRT stuff, which is complete nonsense. Yeah. Which also was highlighted on that program. But I don't know whether enough women are talking about it to make us feel like we're some sort of sisterhood and we can all support each other. It's just, yeah,
let's be a sisterhood.
Yeah, and nobody says anything nice. I mean, yeah, as you're saying, people either breeze through it. And I just thought, because I've never had anything, I'd breeze through this too.
Well, I read an article the other day that said menopause was the best thing that happened to me. So it's out there. And I think that one of the things that I've definitely got from it is just not caring so much about taking care of everybody and being so very careful as a good girl and spending most of my energy tending to others. And I think it is, like this article is menopause, the best thing that ever happened to me. The experience I did not expect to be one of the best of my life going through the menopause. And it's literally, there is freedom on the other side. But for somebody like you who maybe is forthright and who is suffering, that's not quite the same. No. You know, you as the sibling of 6 boys and the mum of 4 boys and who succeeded in sports to the highest level, perhaps you found your forthrightness earlier and so that benefit hasn't been yours. But I do hope there's a treasure on the other side for you.
Yeah. Well, there better be. Gosh, goodness gracious. I just think it's interesting, something that's not physically visible.
Yes.
Can be so like a disability.
Powerful and impactful.
And then, I'm trying to unravel this in my own mind why I've been so pathetic, is because I feel that I have been weak because I haven't been able to manage it on my own, whereas, because it's not a disease, is it? And it's not a, condition. Or it is, I suppose, a condition, yeah. So, but you're right, more people are talking about it, there's books about it, articles and whatever, and we'll get through it and see the funny side, hopefully. I'm
going to ask you two final questions. What would you say to pre-perimenopausal you, to the you that's about to become perimenopausal? What would you today say to her?
Go to the doctor.
And what would your 80-year-old self say to you? So the one that's through perimenopause, it's all finished, it's no more irritability and sleep dip and dryness.
Dryness.
There are creams for that.
The other thing is I don't think I'm going to make old bones.
You don't?
No, I don't think I'll make old bones. So I never even think past that. And I'm not being I'm not being doom and gloom and whatever. I just, I don't think I will for some reason. Nobody in my family has. I mean, I might break the trend.
On a kind day, on today, and say you make old bones and you're 80, what's she going to say to you? About your life?
If I died tomorrow, I would have no regrets. I've had the most amazing life. Just never would have envisaged that I would have done all the things, met all of the people, had all of the opportunities, had a wonderful family, got a marvellous husband. There's been little curveballs along the way, but compared to most people, interesting, challenging, varied, and everything I've done mostly has had some real meaning and purpose. And I just think the next few years is my time.
I think so too. I think it's time to kick back and do something for you. Yeah. And that will have meaning and purpose too.
And I think that too. It's just like getting off the treadmill though, isn't it? It's okay to do that.
Get off the treadmill. Yeah.
Definitely. I've always rushed around like I'm,
I know.
Like a fart in a bottle. And so now I just, that's right. So that's what my 80-year-old self was saying. And that 80-year-old self will say, bring on 100.
Old bones out of you yet. Thanks, Susan.